Right, and Vice City fans, I decided to just finish this PS2 Vice City project and do a quick video of pretty much like any of the decent stuff that I found along the way. I've deleted like, I don't know, stupid amount of gigabytes. There's a load of streams that are online that are just hours long, and there's really no point watching them. It's just kind of something to do and to document the process. So I've got a couple of the cheats and codes and features I made along the way, including vehicle glitches and stuff like that. I'm literally just going to play the videos and just skip through as much as I can to save time. So I've probably spent like a minute describing this video, and there's videos that aren't even that long. I'll mute everything and I'll just kind of go over it. So this was the original project a number of years ago. I'm not quite sure when it was. The video's from 2023, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's accurate due to the Windows datetime naming system bug that exists, which I posted a video on as a warning to Windows users. Anyway, this is obviously a code that's existed for forever in NTSC, but I don't think it was ever in PAL. It's one of the built-in in-game cheats that you can activate, so it's available on any version, and as you can see, it's just a one-button press to cycle through what I've put of all of the available characters, but unfortunately it's not actually all of the available characters. So there's a lot of things in the game that don't exist, and they could kind of carry on if you wanted to. I'm sure someone from the PC would be able to make a mod and do that, but I have been literally screaming out to the internet for a month, which I always do anyway, and never get any results back and always solve stuff myself. But as usual, everyone's just showboating and no one's working together, so this is what we're left with. This is the chase meter. This is one that like I've always wanted. I saw it once when I was a kid, and I think I even saw that online. But this is just the one that basically shows you the counter in the top right-hand side of the screen. And again, it's an inbuilt game feature that was just cut from the game. I'm assuming because it takes up too much of the HUD space and like everything else gets displayed in the exact same position. So there's only one person I know that could make this a permanent feature within the game, so that you can see how long that the cops have been chasing you and what your media attention level is and stuff like that. It's known as the like criminal rating media, or the media attention meter. That person would be Daniel Santos or Pedro, like one of the two, and that's just because these are the only people that I know in the GTA community that understand the instructions, and have made a kind of pseudo widescreen port where it essentially just resizes and moves the icons around. Now, for PAL users, if anybody wanted to look into it, obviously you could try and port Daniel Santos and Pedro's widescreen fix from NTSC 1.40, which is the original version from 2002. You could try and port that to what I would recommend is obviously NTSC, the second version, 2.30 or whatever it was. 2.01 in NTSC and 2.30 in PAL, which is 2003, and that's the Tiger version that I use. Anyway, it would have been a cool feature to have. Maybe move it over to like, can't do the top left-hand screen. The middle would be ideal. Obviously, if you wanted to remove the entire HUD, you could do. So that's the media kind of thing. And if you check that memory region for anything that begins with 14 and ends in like OF or OE or 07 or 15 or 08, then that entire memory region is the entire contents of the cheats within the game. So they're pretty much 4 bytes from each other. Now, this was a cool little scene. This is probably definitely done before. Someone's gone to the boatyard and made a cool little scene. I was using this to essentially test the weather cheats. It's a good place if you want to try and sniper the seagulls and find that address as well. And then therefore you're pretty much in the middle of all of the statistics there. Again, they're like 2C from each other or just 4 byte blocks up and stuff like that. But this was quite good for one of the features that I found with regards to rendering and the camera and the HUD, where I was able to actually physically change the camera, much as you would do when you press select when you're in the vehicle or when cutscenes are engaged and things like that. There's like custom cinematic cameras and stuff. So this is a nice little location to test that stuff. It's a cool little cinematic. So skip that one. And this is Clone Ken. So this is the results of porting the beta 2002 contents to pretty much any other version. I released a binary difference patch of that, which is a legal method of distributing patch files that you can apply to your legally bought files and turn them into another one. It's something that's been around in the Doom community for ages. A binary difference patch is just like a mathematical calculation between the two files, basically. So they're completely and utterly garbage data to anyone who's got the file, unless you own the original target file that you're using. So that's pretty cool. And then the result is just bizarrely, for some reason, it's just things happen. And this one ends up resulting in cloning the vehicle, which allows you to, at the start of the game, not use cheats, not use glitches, not use the tank, not do any bullshit, and end up with a completely damage-proof vehicle, as well as 2 Fagios, 2 Admirals, 2 Kens, and you can also get a cinematic Fagio as well, which is, there's a video on that somewhere. So we've got another cloned Ken one. I believe this is the cinematic bike camera that you can pick up. Which is pretty cool. It's like completely invisible, and it's the only time that I've been able to obtain the cinematic handling bikes that are available within the game. So if you do like a phone call mission and you see someone chasing on a bike, you might notice that the game, it's GTA's 5D is shit, and then it's like the handling on your vehicle is ridiculous compared to all of the AI and NPC that ride bikes. So it is possible have a vehicle with those properties on, but because no one is involved in helping out in finding the only cheat code that we need, or the only address that we need, which is the currently owned vehicle, you need to be able to essentially somehow replace the properties of your currently owned vehicle and transfer that cinematic handling to a vehicle that actually has a vehicle model. Otherwise you end up like this. Now I got really close, but as you can see, all I've managed to do is trying to get a pseudo model in there. It's producing a shadow, so there's obviously some sort of like physical object there, but I was unable to transfer this kind of cool thing to another vehicle, and it's 100% perfect handling as well. It's like even crashing doesn't fling you off as far as you normally would. That's a pretty cool feature. This is entirely the debug port menu. Now this is kind of like a cool thing for me to find after starting the cheat menu, because I had already found this force weather, change weather, and what I call the rendering system options. Now it runs from 0 to 255, which is like no surprise really. So there is literally 255 rendering options within the game, and all of these beta port features are technically available within every single main game version as well. So this is just me creating the this menu within this cheat engine, so people can use it as a pnach. And I believe there's only one feature in the game that I was unable to find, which was the float coordinates. They were very difficult to find, so we needed like a pro to get along with that. And that brings us to DTS. That's something that's not really much point covering. It's basically a silly little fucking glitchy thing where I found the address to force DTS enabled, basically, so that when you save the game or boot up the game, it thinks that it's in DTS mode. I wanted to use it later on to be able to describe like a method of possibly allowing a custom built PCSX2 1.4 or 1.6 version. But I imagine getting hold of the devs and trying to get them to release the version that actually supports some sort of pseudo DDS is going to be difficult, because it's a bit of a contested area, and obviously developers in these environments just really don't give a fuck about anyone unless they're completing at the pros, so that they can just steal information from. So we're not going to get anything beneficial out of that. I can't be bothered to go down the route. If somebody gets hold of the source code that has the working DTS build, it's irrelevant that it breaks every other game in the system, which was their excuse like 10, 15 years ago for not releasing it, which is just a load of bollocks, really. It was more likely some sort of in-house developers dispute between the person who was doing it and everybody else. And then if they had a lack of support, then they wouldn't have supported DDS, because again, it'll kill every other game. But to have a dedicated build would be extremely useful. So, removing the storm barriers, if you replace the roadblocks which are all set to like 999 and non-destructive, with the values of the lamppost, which you can see below is like 600, 4,000 or whatever. This will allow you to destroy the barriers at the start of the game, and it is the best method of doing it because it's compatible with the PS2, PS3. You don't have to glitch and jump through walls and cock about and do all that stuff. You can just literally change that value, and then there's me duplicating an easy black sea sparrow because I haven't seen that done in game before. And also note the large wheels in the background, the monster truck wheels, is one code that I have been unable to find or PAL. So that's another one that needs to be done. This was one that probably everyone did as a kid when they first had no clip and you could jump through the wall. It's something that I should have put in the save game initially, which is now featured in the save game, and that's just starting off with a t-shirt. I was going to do a texture swap on the PS2 so that instead of saying I completed Vice City and all I got was this lazy t-shirt, I wanted it to say I modded Vice City and this t-shirt is still lousy or whatever, or just something stupid. And then it would just differentiate between like, you know, a default game and one that's successfully modded with a texture swap. It can be annoying to swap textures in the game. This was a moment I found not damage proof, but that cool feature that everybody pointlessly likes, which probably destroys the frame rate in the game, but is fine on the emulator. And that's just the ability to drive around with your car on fire and it never explode. I'm not quite sure whether that works when you drive into tanks or not. I think that code is still not defined. But this is pretty cool. It allows you to leave destructive vehicles in the game and stuff. Quick note there, you might have noticed LOD in the background of some of these vehicles. This one here coming in should pop in. There we go. That's one feature that definitely needs to be stopped on the emulator. Yet another address that I was unfortunately able to find. Well, in fact, there is an address in there that has I put a button combo that kind of makes the LOD in kind of stop, but it glitches out. So if anybody can do this, that'd be great. Right, now we're at the location for Hyman Condo, where there is, I'm not quite sure if it's known or people know about it, and they haven't really pointed out clearly, but this is the position at the Hyman Condo that has these path nav issues, which results in NPCs and AI driving into your garage, which is a great free way in this example to get a free tank. So this glitch basically works by doing a mission and then heading towards that location. And in my experience, 90% of the time, I think it was like literally 9 times out of 10 missions that an NPC or an AI drove into the garage. So there's something wrong with the path nav in that area where vehicles think they can drive straight through the tiny barrier section where the blockades are. And obviously the result is that I ended up with an FBI ranch or a security car drove in there, which is one of the missions as well. And that car shouldn't even be following you at that point, so that was a bit bizarre. Kind of cool though. Got a free tank. What if we got a helicopter glitch that took me like 5 hours to do, and then like a day later I found a way that I could have kind of salvaged this by using no clip from water. I just didn't have the cheat code at the time. So this is the Colonel's boats mission. There's probably another way to obtain this helicopter, but I successfully killed the pilot. Unfortunately, after he fell out, the door immediately closed. Now, if we had that address to force vehicles to be unlocked all of the time and never locked, obviously I could have got in there. What I didn't realize, you know, as I said at the time, I didn't have the cheat code, but what I could do at this point, I still have that save game. I can go back to it, turn on no clip, and that vehicle will no clip through the boat. And then I've also now got the cheat code for no clip through water, which is a different type of no clip. You'll see down in the bottom hand here, I've got the walls no clip. That would allow vehicles that spawn basically through the world. When you spawn through the world, you always teleport adjacent in the nearest road location. So that's one that could have been salvaged. There's a hunter that arrives after this. I was unable to clone and do that mission, but still, that was kind of a funny moment and just hours and hours of wasted life. So this is obtaining the quote-unquote impossible to obtain Lance's Infernus. Unfortunately, this is done on the beta, so it would require, again, people with a bit more knowledge about the PC and stuff. But if you've got the cheat code to spawn in vehicles, you can set up these 2 police vehicles. Now, what you'll notice is that these 2 vehicles are set up perfectly. So the first one that I spawn in is the police car, and then the next one in the roster is the police kind of bigger vehicle or whatever. I've totally forgotten the name. But this allows you to block Lance's Infernus during the cutscene by spawning that vehicle in. And then if you quickly replace it with number 157, because the previous was 156, then you can spawn in the SWAT van, which is heavy enough and big enough to block Lance's Infernus. Now, this only works because the final part of the cutscene is not in this game. And what normally happens is he drives off and then it becomes kind of like a ghost car that's impossible to get. I'm not quite sure whether no clip or any other way you can do it, but normally he disappears right about now. As you can see, he turns off around the corner in this one. You could just shoot him in the head and get it. But that next part of the cutscene in the original game, he actually just completely, drives forward. And the game's kind of locked at that point. So I do think it would be possible to obtain that hex data easily from PC and just transfer it over. Obviously, everybody wants to do things in game without cheats because they kind of call themselves purists. But if you wanted to do that, you could at least get some sort of closeness to it. Okay, texture swapping. This was a little bit difficult. It can take multiple attempts just because it's like sometimes the game crashes or it doesn't work or whatever. But I always like the idea. I think this is something I've done like 5 years ago, where you just use up these logos and these signs that are completely pointless that you would never ever notice otherwise, and put some useful features in there. So for playing on PS2, if you're old like me and you can no longer memorize all the cheat codes and everything else, this is a really cool little feature. I put the free health cheat at the hospital entrance. So that was kind of cool. And it's just an example that you can swap textures and 3D models in the game on PlayStation 2 if you're careful. It will work. Again, the Daniels and Pedro's example of that. The Keanu Reeves hack is probably the best one. So now we are in the first time that I was making the garage editor. So this is just me changing vehicles and swapping the colors and then not replacing the color, but just for the vehicle and kind of inheriting the stuff from previous vehicles and stuff like that, and just checking what fits in garages, perfect positions, getting the XY coordinates, blah 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 blah. So that one's not really needed. Okay, these are NTSC to PAL conversions, so I'll probably keep this video just by compressing them all into this one little 20-minute video. So this is just basically notes on if you've got like existing codes within one region and you want to convert them or port them to another. I've done multiple methods of doing this. Obviously, the easiest one is just viewing the memory region and going from there. So I've put kind of like complicated, long-winded methods of doing it. I've put the best practices as well as the worst, if you want to put it that way. There's a couple examples, and like that's not just Vice City related. You can do that with any game. This is me dicking about with the criminal rating setting. Unfortunately, it's temporary. I believe you can't set this as a writable address. But I was able to just, if you want to play the game on PC, you can set the Godfather status to your name instead of some sort of numerical string, which was pretty cool. It's kind of something different to do. It's a different part of the address. Okay, this gold stretch, I won't bother ranting about that, but what I will say is that I've got a full list of every single, 99% of the vehicles in the game with hex data, so now nobody ever has to perform a vehicle glitch again. But to not take away the fun or the potential fun of that, I've included a bunch of new methods and things that I haven't found online so people could go through and practice that instead of repeating, copy and pasting the old stuff. Note, this is not gold. There's no such thing as fucking gold in GTA Vice City. That's an ochre color. I put it through as green ochre, whatever. We won't know what that actually does. It looks pretty gold, but it's like orange yellow. So there's a bunch of popping out vehicles, how to get a sea sparrow in a garage using a brand new glitch, which hasn't been done before, and the fastest way to salvage vehicles from water. Those videos are pretty much available on the YouTube channel. There's just 1-2 minute shorts anyway, so they're kind of useful. It was a bit of a bastard to get that sea sparrow in there, to be honest. And then it looks like we are back to another texture swap, which we know works. And I think that pretty much covers everything. We've done the texture swap in. And this is me toggling the HUD and fixing the debug menu. So that's all of the debug stuff and transferring the cheat codes from 2003 back to the beta. That kind of fixes a couple of things in there. Might help people if they want to do stuff with the beta game. Although it's pointless unless you can backport the missions or forward port the debug menu. This is custom vehicles. Again, this is inheriting one vehicle's color with another. So transferring green to the pizza boy looked pretty cool. Nice little color, but all completely redundant now because the garage editor's made so you can set any color you want. And that brings us right around to 20 minutes to the end of the cheat codes. So there was one other video that was like 30 minutes long, and that was the discovery of the damage-proof editor, where I use this one website, GT Forums there, which, in fairness, I think they've actually allowed my posts to be on there, despite the fact that they deleted it 5 years ago. But in 5 years, nobody nobody answered the fucking question, and there's been about 1 million posts, and it's like each post is someone asking for help with something. They get 250 views, and not one person bothers helping. So that's really shit. But that is how the internet has been for a long time, and obviously it only ever gets worse. But I thought it'd be useful to just keep that video because it just reminds me how I discovered damage proof in the very first instance, and it also corrects that website as well because that post had incorrect information in it. So there you go. Completely done. It leaves us with 3 folders left, I suppose. I'm pretty sure I've already covered everything. These are just like individually done. So this is the rendering system that I mentioned earlier with the 255 options. And unfortunately, it's quite difficult to test on the emulator due to, the fact that it's an emulator. So the super foggy Silent Hill mode and stuff like this may not glitch out if you use the cheat codes on the PlayStation, but obviously that's going to be a lot harder to do. You need a cheat device to do it. But that was a cool discovery because that meant essentially that I'd found the central location for where the beta stuff is, but within this is PAL 2003, so it's all there. And some of the options were, pretty rubbish, and some of them were pretty cool because they are debug options. So that's the rendering. The water no clip was probably one of the most useful ones to discover because it allows you to do this. Headshot someone in a helicopter above water, enable cheats, so turn on no clip, jump back in, turn it on, fall straight through the water, and it teleports over here. So the vehicles always spawn in the road location. And this is quite an interesting one here because it's one of the only places where you can have like 12 vehicles and them not despawn. So this is a great way to salvage boats from the water and have them teleport instead of having to take stuff across the water. And this helicopter here is also how I obtained the hex from the original helicopter in the very first cutscene, which is identical to this, but often confused with a black stripe Maverick. It's not black, you've just got trails enabled by default. There's water no clip. That's probably just 3 videos of the exact same thing landing in different positions. This is the spawning vehicle was probably the most useful one to find. Unfortunately, I'd already completed the game at that point because, again, after an entire month, not one person helped. But that's probably the most expected or wanted cheat code to have to spawn bikes, planes, and cars and stuff. I was kind of glad to get that one working. Keep that one in there, and we've already covered DTS. So there it is. Enjoy. Pretty much covers absolutely everything. You know how to mod the game files, that's all covered. I strongly recommend not doing this. If you've got multiple versions of the game and you end up with 40 gigabytes of regions and differences, it's completely pointless. What I recommend you doing is slimming the game down to 3.0 gigabyte instead of this 34 gigabyte of differences, and that's not even including the Japan one. And then just literally keep a folder for the differences. If you ever want to recreate your ISOs, you can do. Now you can further reduce these differences by breaking open the GTA image and just extracting 1 or 2 textures that differ between versions. I've actually done this, and that then further reduces the 270 odd megabyte down to just literally the 1 or 2 textures that changed within it. So that was kind of useful. The end result then is that you can recreate any of the versions that you want, and it's just 4.5 gigabyte of differences plus your slim ISO at 3 gigabyte. Makes it less than 10 gigabyte, like 8 gigabyte at the most, instead of 34 gigabyte. Now, obviously, I've left it there for the example until the end of this project, but I am ready to delete all of this. They're just there for convenience. So yeah, that's probably one of the cooler ones to do if you're one of the people that like to collect everything. You might find it hard to hit that delete button, but I assure you there is zero loss of data there. And again, if you do the differences along with the breaking open the GTA image, and just removing the name changes and stuff like that, it's like one texture difference, then it saves a significant amount of space. And this is prior to even zipping it or compressing it. So you'd be looking at probably 5 gigabyte or 12 versions and releases of GTA, which is pretty cool. Don't think there's anything else to cover. I'll just double check. I mean, we know we've got all of our cheats, so somebody can work through those. I put PAL and NTSC for 2003 in the same version, and then the 2002 beta. Obviously, I haven't put all of the NTSC and all of the PAL codes in there. You need a combination of this as well as the pnach cheats for PCSX2. Mods have all been covered, other than the swap in the frame rate for NTSC. It does actually make a significant difference if you play the entire of the PAL game and then play the entire of the NTSC one. You will notice a significant difference with just things like the vehicle handling, being able to get in and out of vehicles, like when you get pulled out of vehicles, get arrested. That difference from sort of 50 to 60 hertz is incredibly useful within this game. So it does allow you to do it with PAL. Unfortunately, this modification itself using adrenaline patcher to modify the no bypass, you do obviously get lots of resolution because that's always been the same from NTSC to PAL. You get that increased frame rate, but it also changes the CRC of the game, which unfortunately makes saves incompatible. However, you could use all the information and the stuff that I provided with this kit and the save file example for 2003 PAL and create a speedrun save, which might be quite fun. I kind of like to see if somebody can complete it within an hour and a half and do basically everything that I've done within a month and kind of use that information to literally speedrun a perfect save file within the lowest amount of time possible. Might actually be more fun than playing the game. I think that's pretty much definitely it. I mean, there's a bunch of videos, images that I could add, I suppose, where there's just like multiple vehicles in a garage, differences between vehicles and the nuances and the colors. Everybody knows about the so-called black and pink traffic. Ironically, that's not pink; it's actually purple. I mean, I believe even Rockstar referred to the cheat code as pink traffic, despite the fact that their own code dictates that it is purple, both by the color value and the name in the color ads. So, a bit annoying. We've seen that one. We've seen the clone Ken. This was me glitching the final mission and ended up with this hilarious image. Probably a good point to end this video, really, on that. Everything else is just sort of examples of the mods. Oh, this one was extremely useful. If this is an example of replacing the garage door mesh at a pay and spray. Now, if you were to do this at the garage at Ocean Heights, it would fix the issue where when you try and push damaged vehicles into it, they despawn or disappear. And this is because Ocean Heights has this weird thing where you can actually park the vehicle practically outside the garage, and you can close the garage door and it'll obviously not be visible, and then when you open the garage door it spawns back out on the road. Now if you swap the garage door for the mesh, and as you can see the texture's kind of perfectly seamless there, this becomes an invisible wall. Again, I've done it at the paint spray because I couldn't find or didn't spend enough time looking for the other garage doors, but you're now able to just drive straight in through this and out at any time, as well as getting the paint spray occur, and you can drive straight through the back, the sides as well. So this actually makes it a lot easier and potentially fixes a significant sort of issue with the game. You can swap the chrome bumpers on taxis for purple. It takes a little bit of fiddliness, but you can kind of interchange black and purple vehicles, as we saw back wherever it was, back in one of these in this one. So that is entirely possible. I mean, it may be documented online, but I didn't see it. And that would be the end of that. And then this is widescreen tests. I was actually quite surprised because I always put the game in widescreen by default. It's just something always done since having an old school massive CRT widescreen TV like 30 years ago. But because of how how the game's built and these tall buildings and just the blockiness, the game actually looks better on default without widescreen mode. And this is extremely bizarre. I know, I can't believe I'm saying it myself. But honestly, if you spend a significant amount of time through the game, you will notice this massive change is it makes a big difference. So for some reason, after spending years playing Vice City multiple times in widescreen, it turns out better to not do that. Anyway, 30 minutes over. Enjoy.